everyone. Welcome. I'm Michelle Ament, the Chief Academic Officer of ProSolve. I'm so excited that you're all here today and just looking forward to this amazing conversation.
Travis here, also excited to be a part of this. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ProSolve. And what I'm particularly excited about is this is a conversation that is a long time coming. We work with a lot of district administrators. We kind of hear the same story unfold over and over, which is we believe that, portrait of a graduate and human skills are vital more than ever. But how do we put that into practice, right? How do we go from poster to actual usage? And so that's the point of this conversation. That's what I'm excited about, is how can we really have deep, meaningful conversations of really connecting the dots and creating value out of these things as opposed to just being a poster.
Well, and today we have two guests joining us that really are making that poster to practice a reality, that are also building human skills in really unique ways, both during the school year and in summer and after school programs. And so I'm really excited to bring our guests into the conversation. This is really meant to be a conversation of people coming together to share ideas and insights and really solve some of these problems that you mentioned, Travis. So first, I want to welcome and introduce Roman Stearns. Roman, welcome. He is the Executive Director at Scaling Student Success. He works with districts to build their Portrait of a Graduate initiatives, but most importantly, I think he works with guiding teams to really think about implementation. It's one thing to build and identify a vision for building skills, but it's another to do the hard work to move that into practice. And Roman's here today to talk about that work with Scaling Student Success. Next, we have Dr. Natalie Taylor Barbiera, and she comes to us from Claremont Unified School District. She's the Director of Educational Services, and Natalie is working firsthand with teachers to prioritize implementing human skills with students. And today she's really going to tell us how to do this, what works, what are the ways that we start to see this type of learning come alive in our classrooms and in our schools. So we're very excited to have you both here. Thank you, Natalie and Roman, for joining us. This conversation is really going to be all about one essential question. How is it that we work together to prepare students with the human skills they need to be relevant for an AI world and workforce? And we have some people joining us today in this live event. We would love to have you contribute to the conversation along the way, add your ideas, your insights. And so to kick things off, tell us where you're joining from, maybe give a little introduction to yourself, where you're joining from. And then as we go through the conversation, we'll be looking for your questions and comments to help kind of guide this conversation. So we'll just take a minute to get folks who are joining us introducing themselves, and we'll continue to we'll move on and get started. With really starting first with understanding how career readiness has changed over the ages. So Travis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to kick us off by thinking about what's the why? What's the end destination of this conversation? Why does Portrait of a Graduate? Why do these skills matter at the end of the day? What I would argue or make the case for is that a huge part of what we have to do is become productive citizens and contribute to the workforce and find job opportunities when they leave the school building. And if you think about what it meant to be career ready throughout time, that definition has changed over the ages. And so early, for most of human history, I would argue that we needed physical labor to be successful in the workplace, right? So whether you were a farmer or a warrior, hunter-gatherer, your ability to do something physical, that's what it meant to be career ready. And then we invented machines to start doing that physical labor for us. And this ushered us into a new age, an age that most of us have spent our entire lives growing up in, and that is the knowledge age. And in this age, knowledge was power. Knowledge was the key to getting success in life. If I get a 4-year college degree, I am guaranteed success in that workplace. And so we built an entire institution that does this beautifully well, right? Building that knowledge for us. And what I believe is happening right now is we are living in a transitionary period of life. Just like when we created the industrial machines, we are now creating machines, artificial intelligence, to do the knowledge for us. And this is disrupting 65% of the workforce that is a knowledge type of job: accountants, doctors, lawyers, teachers, and so on. So the question becomes, what is the future era? What do we have to prepare students for? And what does that look like? What does the workforce value in a post-AI workplace? I would suggest that the future is human. It is our uniquely human skills, the things we can do well that AI may not be able to do as well, that will keep us relevant in that job workplace. And right now, as we pursue this workforce demanding these human skills, we're also seeing a potential decline in the human skills in kids coming out of the workforce, out of schools today, than even prior generations, when it's more important than ever, right? So think about those human skills: your communication ability, your collaboration, your resiliency, your grit, your ability to solve problems worth solving. Like, these are essential skills. And we've got to think of new ways to build an institution that is truly going to prepare our students for this reality that we're living in. The system we have today served us well for the time being, for the knowledge era. It's time to think something different for us to go forward.
Thanks, Travis, for setting the stage for our conversation today. And my first question for all of us to really chime in on is, as we think about this shift from the knowledge age to the human skills age, are we really seeing this happening in our schools? What do you think? Natalie, Roman, Travis, what are you seeing in schools?
Well, I can jump in. I'm in schools every day. So one of the things that, that we're seeing is we're seeing a concern from teachers, number one, about how do I manage AI in my spaces, right? And one of the great things that Travis said is that our teachers are not going to be replaced by AI. They're going to be replaced by teachers who use AI. And so how do we work with the students that we have who are digital natives? And many of our teachers are not. We come from a school district where folks stay until they retire. We have folks who have been teaching for a very long time in our spaces, and with great intentions, but maybe not the technical skills that our kids have. And so how do our teachers take the beautiful human skills that they have and infuse those into the kids and allow the kids to have curiosity and grit and self-efficacy to share their digital skills in such a way that creates this beautiful connection? That's what we're seeing most in our schools right now.
And I just wanted to comment on that really quick. I think that's the key. You know, I've been in this industry for over 15 years now, and the constant theme is like, certain teachers aren't adapting the latest technology, and that's the problem. If they just level up their smarts with tech, all problems will be solved. And what I would argue, and I think this reinforces what you were saying, is that great teachers have been building human skills way before technology existed. The argument I would make today is that while some used to do it, all must do it in today's educational environment. And so it's not about the teacher needing to be an expert in the technology per se. That will help them make them more efficient and solid to do so. But at the end of the day, what I care about is, are they developing grit, resiliency, empathy, and kids, caring for their kids in ways that are going to change those kids' life for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add that I'm going to make a call out to one of our participants, Aaron Eden, who I've known for years, and we worked together in Bali, Indonesia, at Green School, which was amazing. But one thing he taught me is how we teach is as important, if not more important, than what we teach. And when we think about this transition that some school systems are making to more of a project-based approach, or using work-based learning or civic learning, service learning, like those kinds of student-centered experiential learning methodologies, then we are promoting those human skills in a very real way every day in every classroom. In some systems, you always have experimenters. You have some teachers that are like trying out or doing a project here or there, but it's when systems transition and invest in building teacher capacity to use those more student-centered experiential learning methodologies that we see the shift towards human skills in more of a wholesale way. And that I think is essential, but requires resources, requires capacity building, and some investment for sure.
Fantastic. You've all started to sort of touch on this next question I have for you. And so I want to hear a little bit more. When you talked about a lot of skills, I heard a lot of things. I heard empathy, I heard grit, I heard problem solving. What do you think is one of the most important human skills that we develop for an AI world? What kind of comes to the top for you?
I can jump in. One thing is being able to intuit nonverbal cues. I'm not sure AI will ever be able to do that. Maybe. I just don't know enough about AI to know if that's possible. But building relationships and building trust, I think, is also critically important. That will never go away. Mm-hmm. Folks tend to respond most to people who they trust and where they have relationships. Catering group processes to individual strengths and interests, like that AI might be able to do a bit of, but I think we can, as humans, do that more. And just engaging in highly human ways through empathy. Mm-hmm. I think, AI is going to try to get better at that too, I'm sure. But I don't know that they'll ever be able to replicate human experience in that way. And finally, just exercising kindness and curiosity. Yeah. That's some of the things that are uniquely human. I think we can lean on those.
Yeah. I was just going to jump in and say that there are some early stage companies that are using like FaceTime type technology with AI that starts to read body language and cues. Time will tell to what degree it can do that well. But, just to kind of take it a different direction, I totally agree, Roman, with some of your pieces. For me, the thing that really stands out is adaptability and resiliency, the ability to do hard things, the ability to face adversity and come out stronger because of it. We live in a world where the answer is no longer as clear, right? In the workforce, it used to be where it's like show up 9 to 5, do as you're told, make your phone calls, whatever it is, go home and you check out. I would argue more and more jobs, those kinds are going away. And what remains are very complex problem-solving jobs that are necessary and ones in which you will get it wrong, maybe more than you get it right, depending on what you're doing. I know in our company, we've had this struggle at times when we've created this identity, this need to say, we're doing new things. We're doing stuff no one has ever done before. So we have to be willing to fail. We have to be willing to get it wrong in order for us to improve and possibly invent something no one has ever seen before. Mm-hmm.
Well, and you're speaking to some of the skills that we're seeing that our viewers are saying. Dr. Mark is talking about this relationship and trust, and then also collaboration and connection. We're hearing empathy as a strong skill from Sandy. Go even further about grit, resiliency, empathy. Natalie, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, as I'm kind of looking through everyone's comments, I think the theme for me is that idea of effective communication. When I introduce myself, oftentimes the last thing I start with is my title at work. I will tell you that I am a mom of 2, this little micro generation of Z Alpha kids that are digital natives, but also COVID survivors. That's really important in framing who I am. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an auntie. I'm all of these things, and being able to communicate in a way that says, I understand your same experience because I have lived that, or I know someone like you, is really important. Our kids, they can engage in learning with AI. Any kid who is on any platform right now of online learning can use ChatGPT to get all of the answers that they need. And what we're seeing so much with students who needed that is that now they're saying, now how can I come back and be in a classroom with kids, with adults, so that I can talk through some of these things, but also developing the skills then of what does it mean to effectively communicate with other people? What might it mean when other people have had a bad day? How might you need to adjust your communication skills? What does it look like when the energy of a room shifts? How do you pay attention to that? Because those skills are really important. The cleaned up email that you use to write your job application is going to make you sound wonderful. But when you show up, are you also that great? Have you practiced those skills of how to engage with other folks? And those things I think are really important. So to me, it's really that communication piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add, I mean, you mentioned the hiring practices, and I think that's such a critical piece to this equation. AI is going to help you look sharper on paper.
Right.
But what I see companies doing is they're moving away from traditional interviews and other aspects, and they're looking for ways to assess those human skills. How do you communicate in an interview or in a hiring process becomes more important than, let me tell you all the smart things that I know is going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, Natalie, you really tapped into that human side, at least for me, that human to human connection that I really seek out. And that is so true about you. Like when I got to know you, it was more about who you, Natalie, is as a person than your title and what you do. And I think you really are tapping into something that we're starting to see less and less of in our world. And so next, I want to share with you all a framework that ProSolve has recently developed called the Human Skills Framework. And I'm really interested not only to tell you what this framework is all about, but then to hear from you your first impressions, where you think that this really would meet the needs of learners that you are thinking about for an AI world. So when we think about ProSolve's Human Skills Framework, we have built this framework in 3 domains: the idea of humans who solve, who connect, and who adapt. And when we think about this domain of humans who solve, it really is the thinking that AI can't do. It's uniquely human thinking. It's judgment, it is discernment, it's this idea of creative problem solving. We know that information through AI is ubiquitous. We can get any content we want from AI. In fact, AI can solve the bar exam. So our graduates today, it's not about the information that they need. It really becomes about how they use that information to solve problems and add value to the world. So that's what we think about when we think about humans who solve. When we think about humans who connect, we think about that human to human connection, that idea of how do we build deep relationships, understand each other's perspective, empathize with one another. Our world is really saturated with technology. And I think having exactly what you said, Natalie, having that focus on communication and relationship building is central to this domain. And then the last domain is humans who adapt. And humans who adapt is really 2 focuses. One is on being resilient and adaptable through change, being able to persist through difficulty, and also being able to learn and grow and evolve in our world. And so as we think about this human skills framework, we've identified these 3 domains to really define the skills that students need in an AI world. Then what we think about is the idea of learning skill categories. And what we have done here is we have identified categories that really support and deepen the idea of humans who adapt. Now we're thinking about it through the categories of interpersonal and learning skills. And so this idea that it's too broad to just categorize adaptation or being adaptable, we really need to bucket that into different categories. And so thinking about that for this framework, and the idea that teachers really need to know exactly what students need to know and be able to do. And so the skill categories help to define that a little bit more for them. Next, we bring in the full view of the framework, where you can see in the center those domains, and around the outside, you can see the skill categories. In the middle, what you can see there are all of the skills that we have identified as being essential for our AI world. And here's how we came up with those skills. We really did a deep analysis of research in the field, both in the education sector, but also in the workforce, really looking at what is the workforce saying today the skills are that are needed, and what are the skills that are needed in the future. And so a couple of things I want to point out too, as you look and kind of take in these skills. First, I want to look up in the purple, the humans who solve. So when we think about this category, that's that set of cognitive skills. And one of the things that's unique in this is this idea of systems thinking. Oftentimes, we don't see systems thinking on your typical portrait of a graduate or framework. It's often missing. And I would argue, as we think about humans who solve complex problems, being able to move from part to whole, being able to navigate change really is a vital part of solving complex problems. And then you pair it with critical thinking and creative thinking, and you have a whole package of skills that are for the future of really solving complex problems. In fact, the World Economic Forum just recently in their Jobs of the Future report found that critical or creative thinking is the number one skill that they are lifting up. And it really is, because AI can critically think, can produce information, but it takes that human creative element to think outside the box, to think around the problem, to see what's missing. And so those skills round out our humans who solve domain. If you look over at the humans who connect domain, you'll see the interpersonal skills. This is that how kids and humans work with one another. And you're not surprised to see collaboration and communication there. But something else that stands out for us is this idea of social awareness. Oftentimes that skill is embedded into communication and collaboration, and we really believe that it should stand on its own. I think it was you, Natalie, who talked about, or maybe it was Roman, being able to read the room, being able to pick up on the perceptions that you're getting from others, the ideas that maybe the unspoken things that aren't always said that really tap into communication. And that is a skill set that our students need to be building. And as we continue to focus on relationship skills, the three of those going together makes up that interpersonal. Then if we look down below, we really feel that humans who adapt is our largest category. It is what our students need today more than ever. And so if we think about, if you see the intrapersonal skills, you'll see some that you recognize: self-awareness, self-management, and we've also added self-efficacy. And self-efficacy there because it's one thing to be able to know yourself, be aware, manage your emotions, but that belief in your ability to do hard things, that belief in who you are, that self-efficacy is crucial and sometimes overlooked. And recently, the World Economic Forum, in their Jobs of the Future, lifted up self-efficacy as one of the top skills, really because of the disruptive workforce that we are in. And it is going to take that ability to be resilient and be efficacious to move through that. So we've added self-efficacy as one of the skills that we believe that students really need to be successful in an AI workforce. Then if you look at our last category, it's the learning skills. And we have curiosity, resilience, and perseverance here. This is really all about learning agility, learning how to learn. If you think about curiosity, and I heard that as one of a top skills someone mentioned, that's that ability to ask questions. If there's anything I know about my own use with AI, if I know how to ask it a really great question, it will give me the information and help me discover new things that I didn't even know. And so being able to ask a curious question, being able to wonder and discover is at the heart of continuous learning. Pair that with perseverance, being able to do those hard things and face the impossible and not give up and really persevere through those difficult times, creates that resiliency and that adaptability piece that is so important, the three of them going together. And I think oftentimes we see frameworks or portraits of a graduate that list those kind of off to the side as mindsets. And what we really believe is that these are skills that students need to build, and we can intentionally teach them how to build these skills and how to assess them to ensure that they are equipped to be successful. So all of these skills make up our human skills framework. But one of the things I want to share with you to go just a little bit deeper is that as we think about this framework, we've also identified strands that really define each of the skills. So oftentimes we tell educators, teach communication. Your kids need to be good communicators. And what does that really mean? Because that is a robust skill. So what we've done is we've taken that down to 4 strands for each skill. So you're looking at communication. And we know that to be a good communicator, you need to be able to express ideas, to listen actively, to be engaged in dialogue, to be able to hear perspective and anticipate perspective in the room. And so those 4 strands make up the skill of communication. One not more important than the other, all needed. And so our framework has not only identified the domains, the categories, the skills, but then the strands to really understand what those skills are. And we've taken it one step further in our framework, and that is to create rubrics to really help teachers know what students need to know and be able to do. So when we think about this rubric, what you're seeing is a progression from pre-K through 12th grade. Each of these parts of the progression are developmentally age appropriate for that grade band. We have a description of what kids should be able to know and be able to do. So this rubric acts as both a teaching tool and an assessment tool. And it gives teachers the guidance of what it means to have those skills at a foundational, building, and developmental level across a progression of expression for communication. Something just to name that I think is really important as we put this together is that we really focused in on strong observables. So what was important to us is making sure that it was actually something that teachers could observe, that we didn't use vague language to describe it, that it was observable, that they could really assess whether they saw those skills happening in their classrooms, on the playground, before and after school. It's really about making those invisible skills visible, because often these human skills are hard to measure. And so this rubric helps to really understand what students need to be able to do, and then how we know that they're being successful. I think the last thing I'll say about this rubric that's just really, really important to us is that it is all grounded in strengths and assets. You won't see anything that says what students can't do. It's always about what students can do and what is the next level to continue to progress and grow in that skill. So we have 3 domains, 4 categories, 12 skills, 48 strands, rubrics for each strand, and then over 800 assessment points to really understand those skills. And again, our focus is to help equip educators and schools and districts with information to really be able to help students grow and learn in those skills. So what I would love to do is stop talking and hear from you. What are your first impressions, and specifically some skills that maybe jump out at you and that are new and maybe you don't typically see?
Are you asking panelists or are you asking audience members?
I'm asking both. I will remove I'll leave this up for just maybe I'll bring it down so we can have a conversation. So both audience and panelists, I've seen some comments coming in, so we can take a look at some of those and just have a conversation around what are your first impressions? What's jumping out at you?
I love what Kimberly said, is that getting stuck on the implementation is often because we're trying to see, sometimes those human skills are things that feel innate for some folks and maybe not so present in other folks. Anybody who's met my husband knows that he is charismatic and joyful, and he is like the human skills captain, right? Travis and Michelle have both met him. And other people look at him and go, I don't know how you do it, right? And so for a teacher, if your job is to think about how do I build these skills in another human, when I myself look at people and go, I don't know how you do it, this rubric really lays it out in a very clear format that allows teachers to have access to that and say, okay, I'm really good at teaching. I know how to follow a rubric. I can do this, and I can look at the next step. So it's this roadmap that that teachers rely on for so many of the lessons that they teach, and they're able to use that in that way. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll double click on the first sentence of Kimberly's comments, that it's great that you built this out all the way to progressions or rubrics. It's sometimes the dense and heavy work of school districts as they operationalize their portrait of a graduate or a learner. And they get stuck on it sometimes, or it's just about the implementation of it. Like, how do they then build capacity of their teachers to actually leverage and utilize those? How do they convert them into I can statements for students, so students can have agency and ownership and voice in their growth? And then how do we build assessment systems, which I know you guys are working on, to build out the opportunities to not only provide feedback for students, which may be most critical of all, but also to externally assess if that's an interest of a school district to hold themselves accountable for growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Michelle, if you can share your screen again with the wheels. I'm losing my voice a little bit, but so one of the things that I really wanted to just reinforce about this is the way they build off of one another and support. So when I look at this, first and foremost, this is what I typically want to hire for. These are the skills. We need to move away from being specialists to generalists again, where we have this broad set of human skills for whatever job we might land or fall into. But if you look at the right hemisphere of the brain, the wheel here, you'll see that learning skills to me are foundational to build cognitive skills. We have to be curious to build upon our critical thinking and so on. And the same can be said on the left side, where to be socially aware and have great communication, we have to be self-aware and able to have that self-efficacy. So I think the quadrants here have a lot of hidden meaning behind them on how they build off each other, and how at the end of the day, humans who adapt remains that foundational pillar that allows us to grow into other parts of being human.
Travis, that's so great to make those connections as to kind of how it is really, and I saw this in the chat, it is really that whole child approach, right? Like, it's a whole human approach, whether we're building those skills or whether, like you said, hiring for those skills. You don't want someone that is curious and can ask questions all day long, but can't think critically and know what to do with the information that they are asking questions and use that to make something. So that how they interplay is great. Let's look at a couple other comments that are coming in. We're seeing this idea of the need to really, if you've got students who excel at expression but are struggling with listening, and if they're great at perspective but can't engage in dialogue, that holistic view of the skill is essential for building it. It's not one of those things as more important than another. I'm really curious for both people listening and joining us, and then also our group here, what skills are new to you I pointed out a couple that were new to me. What are you not seeing on Portrait of a Graduates that we frameworks that we should be seeing, Roman?
Yeah, so of course, we see communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, the four on the top. That's, in mostly every portrait. The adapt skills are often included, but in varied ways, right? Sometimes they're subsumed under broader categories. So for example, if it might, a learner portrait might include self-directed lifelong learning, for example. And that may be the heading. But under it, we see bullets around perseverance, around resilience, around curiosity. So sometimes they're there, but they're a little bit hidden unless you look at the next deeper level down, which some folks don't see in a poster because sometimes they're not in a poster, right? Another example might be a heading around culturally competent citizens. And then under it, we may see self-awareness and social awareness. But again, they get hidden to a certain degree. And then the question is, how are teachers and other youth-serving adults interpreting that portrait and using it? Mm-hmm. Are they digging down to each of the bullets and trying to incorporate each of them independently through project and lesson and unit design, or through experiential learning outside of the classroom and after school programs or summer programs, or in the community, or are they just trying to generally tap those high level competencies? And if it stops there, then we lose the nuance of some of the competencies in your framework.
Yeah, it's making me wonder if that's maybe why the skills like curiosity or self-efficacy or adaptability are underrepresented. We're not seeing them in students. It may be that districts have good intentions, but if they are layered in a framework or in an implementation, they could get overlooked.
I think that the important thing about when making your portrait is it's a statement of what you value equally. And that's the key piece here, right? So if resiliency is buried in another layer, then it is saying communication is more important than resiliency. So I think when we think about it, that the visualization of it is so key because it declares to the world what we value most or least. And so in the sense of, the human skill here is it's equally valuing resiliency and communication. It's saying we need those both at the same level. And so that may be the right answer for us, but maybe it is different for someone else, and that's okay. But just keep in mind when we build these things, what we visualize will be what we state to the world we're prioritizing in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And the very heavy lift, which Travis, I've heard you say before, is that we still organize our education system around content. Right. And until we can switch and organize our education system around these human skills and use content as fodder for the practice and demonstration of human skills, then we're going to continue to, in some cases, marginalize these human skills in a way that doesn't serve young people. And that's just, it's really turning education on its head to be able to make that transition. And more importantly, it's looking at state and federal accountability systems and pulling that rug out from under everybody, because it's going to be, unfortunately, quite a long time before state and federal accountability systems make that switch. But maybe we can move that forward.
I mean, my question for all three of you is, I totally agree with you. I would argue we won't be able to prioritize human skills until we can quantifiably measure it, because then we can start putting funding behind it. I don't know if I want that to be the case, but that's the reality we might live in. I'm curious if you guys agree or disagree with that statement. Is there another path in which education can prioritize human skills?
I think there are other levers. None of which I think are likely to happen, but there are some possible ones. Universities could start to prioritize human skills for admissions purposes. That's a huge lever, and that would change the game for K-12 education, particularly high schools. I don't see that happening in the near future. University professors and decision.
Would you say that they'd have to measure it to be able to enroll people in via showing human skills?
Well, they have to have a way, measure in quantitative ways. No, but maybe like mastery transcript or other similar kinds of transcripts that graphically represent a student's ability level. I think would work fine. But just knowing here in California, knowing folks at University of California on campuses and at the system level, I just don't see this happening for a very long time. Funding is another lever, of course. And if funding were tied to student demonstration of human skills, then that could shift the system. But I also don't see that happening very soon. So, there could be some smaller initiatives or incentives like grant funding or for some flexibility that might enable this to be piloted and tested, experimented with.
I'm gonna challenge a little bit on the small piece, because to me, small is everything, right? We have this sphere of influence. This is the office I sit in and the school district that I'm in. And to me, I think sometimes we spend a lot of time thinking through the development of what we would love to see as adults. And really, we need to allow the kids that system thinking. So for us, we're saying we've been in this system. This is my 20th year in education, right? So not mentioning the ones where I sat as the student in the 4th grade class. And so for me, I have one idea of what school looks like and potentially a vision of what it could look like. But a lot of the same, but I don't know, will I see that in my lifetime? But when you grab a kid and you say, hey, what could this look like? Knowing the confines of being a content-based system, we just started something a couple of years ago called our Superintendent's High School Advisory Committee, SHAC. The kids are the system thinkers. What's working? How do we creatively solve what's not working? You tell us. And they are doing this work. They are saying, well, you should have thought through this way. And they're doing it in ways that absolutely changes the trajectory of our schools. News-making changes that are happening in our schools because our kids are saying, finally, someone's asked us and we're ready to tell you. So let's develop what needs to happen. When we create kids that can do that, those kids then spread themselves to, hundreds of universities around the country, and they're the leaders, because if we develop these human skills, they're going to go make those changes because they're going to demand it. So we hold on to that small is all piece.
Small is all.
I love the small is all. And at the same time, I feel like the small is all needs to happen in at least dozens, if not hundreds, of school districts across the state in order to influence the state in the decision making. Right. And so that's why what we're doing at Scaling Student Success is kind of building a community among the districts, the 100+ school districts that have a learner portrait, and trying to, and we write letters and get them signed by superintendents and send them on to state leaders in ways to try to influence decision making and policy shifts and mindset shifts, just to kind of influence thinking and thought. But we need to see examples. We need to elevate them. Make videos, tell stories, social media, promoting it. And I think it will come from all those voices, but that all needs to be coordinated in a way that can, it could be, 1,000 flowers blooming, but ideally, if those 1,000 flowers are all on one hill and we can see them all together, and that's impressive as opposed to scattered all over the place where there's one here, one way over there, one way over there, then it's just it gets lost.
So it sounds like it's maybe a multitude of things. And I'm thinking about two things. One is I'd love, Roman, for you to go a little bit deeper in the work that's happening in California. And with that, also this idea of what do we need to stop doing? Because I think there's power in stopping, taking things off people's plates, removing barriers. So I don't know, which do you want to go for, Roman, first?
Well, I'll just do one stop first. The state should stop requiring school districts to report on every single grant program initiative, except 60, 80 some odd across the state. It's a huge number, and it requires so much time and resources. That's not productive. It's not student centered. And so, one thing that we're proposing is that we have this kind of comprehensive reporting platform where we streamline all of that in a way that cuts time and resources so that educators can spend time where it's really needed. The other thing that we should stop doing, which is a mindset shift in itself, is paying so much attention to standardized test scores. And when I say that, I mean not only district leaders and site leaders, but also the media, and particularly the media and policymakers. Like every single progress report we read about in the news is all about standardized test scores. And we just need to convey the message over and over and over again to those mainstream media and social media sources that a standardized test is a snapshot in time. That's absolutely, in California, no stakes for students, meaning it doesn't affect their grades, doesn't affect job readiness or college readiness. I mean, not that it doesn't indicate in some way, but it doesn't impact directly. And so until we can pull the rug out from the influence that standardized test scores has on the system, then we may not be able to make too much progress on this. The other side of your question, like what can we be doing? I think the instructional shifts are really critical. I mentioned that earlier. And using AI to help personalize learning, to cater to individual students' interests and needs and their career goals and aspirations. Like AI is really good at that. So we don't, every teacher could have, even in a classroom, could have 35 different versions of a project that has the same kind of guardrails and framework, but individualized for each student. We need to shift roles, and we've heard a lot about teachers shifting from sage on stage to guide on the side, and just to facilitate learning experiences. And that unfortunately is not as pervasive as we would like it to be across systems when we walk into classrooms. We need a culture shift where students and teachers build mutual trust and respect, recognizing that all members of a learning community have something valuable to offer, and if students are going to thrive, then they need to play more active roles with greater agency. So teachers must cede control in order to cede CEDE, right? In order to nurture that transition and promote co-design with students. And then the fourth shift, I would say, is curriculum shift. We need to make the very difficult move that I mentioned earlier from centering content to centering human skill development. And this goes very much against the grain of decades or centuries of educational practice. It pushes up against structures, kind of traditional content-based structures, report cards, Carnegie Unit, LMS, platforms, self-contained single subject classrooms, bell schedules, all of that. That's really a lot to disrupt. And also accountability systems, standardized test scores I mentioned earlier, but also teacher credentialing based on content knowledge expertise, university admissions based on academic criteria. So there are these kind of, I think, four big shifts: instruction, curriculum, roles, and culture.
I just wanted to comment on a couple of those. I kind of see the dots connecting from a lot of the things you're saying. You had a great list of things to be considering and thinking about. What I find interesting is, for the last 20 years or so, what I've seen is there's of course been a push to change teaching practices of not being a sage on the stage. And then the irony of this is that if the lecture-based teaching is a relic of the knowledge era, what we're finding is if we value standardized tests and disseminating knowledge, lecture's pretty good at accomplishing it. So we wonder why our teachers are being told, we've got to go away from sage on the stage, and they continue to do it, when the thing in which we measure them, to go to your first point, is that we still abide by the standardized test system. And when we think about the media playing a role into this, I love that comment, because often parents can be the biggest resistors of this change in community sometimes, because their logic is, school worked for me potentially, and I have a job, I'm making a living and so on. So I want my kids to make sure they grow up the way I grew up, with worksheets, with knowledge, information, with all the things, in order for my kid to be successful. So it's that cultural shift we have to have in parents and communities. It is moving away from prioritizing on all levels standardized testing. And it's going to your point, it's changing the teaching practices, but the practices won't change unless we change the ruling stick in which teachers are held accountable to.
Natalie, I can tell you're itching to respond here. Because my burning question for you is, how do you develop agency in teachers when you have so much requirements and accountability measures? Because I think that is, to me, that's the juxtaposition there, is that they don't have that ability to have freedom and autonomy, do what they innately want to do because of some of the parameters. But what what are your thoughts on that, or anything Roman or Travis said?
Yeah, I think, one of the comments on the webinar here says that, that districts and admin need to stay out of the way. And I would say that districts and admin need to clear the way. We need to roll out the red carpet and say, we see you. And we were also teachers who felt the same frustrations that you're feeling as a teacher. I am that practitioner, right? And so I'm always thinking about what could this look like tomorrow in a classroom. And for me, we have spent a lot of time saying, in Claremont Unified School District, our core values are very clear: excellence, equity, innovation, and integrity, right? It doesn't say standards met on standardized testing. It says excellence. What does that look like? And so we've spent a lot of time defining that. And we sit with our teachers and our paraeducators and our students, and we say, this is what we expect of you. And the whole child is one of those things. But we need to back it up as administrators. And so I lead professional development with all of our administrative team and all of our teachers. We do culturally responsive teaching training every other month for the past 4 years. And we say, this is what that looks like. And these are the human skills that we're working on with students. We have a community of practice with teachers where they come together every 6 weeks for a day outside of their classroom to develop their human connection, their ability to problem solve whatever is coming up in their classrooms. It is not a day to, go through the lesson books for the new history, social science curriculum. That's not the point. The point is, what are we facing today? How do we solve it? And how do we clear the way for you to do that work and provide you all the resource to do it? One of the great things that we did this summer with the help of ProSolve is we implemented Quest in our summer school programs for English learners. We've been doing English learner summer school for as long as I have been working in the school district. And every year on the 5th week, which is the last week, we have about half of the students that we started with. Attendance drops. It is dry. If I didn't learn to read and write in the school year, I'm surely not going to do it with a rinse and repeat in the summer. And so we implemented Quest. And to Travis's point about parents, our English learner students, parents, school was maybe not what served them, right? And so for these parents, they come to us and they say, please help our children learn. And then their kids go home and go, I don't want to go back to school the next day. But when they had Quest, they didn't want to not come. They were begging their parents, please make sure I get to the bus on time. Someone's going to be sitting there waiting for me. They're welcoming me into the classroom. And we had the highest attendance rate at the 5th week than we ever had, because the kids went home and told the parents, this is really cool. And I love what's happening now. And so that was a way to really bring everybody in. But we did that by saying, this is what we value. These skills are what you value. The content will come because you're engaged in being a learner now. So, those are the things that really make the difference. But I do think it's not about leadership getting out of the way. I think it's about leadership paving the way and bringing everybody along and saying, this is what we expect. And yes, we know everyone's worried about standardized test scores, but those are going to come so long as we keep doing this.
Yeah. That's the great words of wisdom there, Natalie. And Sandy is talking about, she's a retired principal, and really also from clearing the way, staying out of the way of really smart, talented folks, which it sounds like that's what you're doing, is creating the conditions, setting the expectations that Claremont Unified believes in these 4 things. And then how is it to make that happen is brilliant. Well, as we start to wrap up our time together, this has been a great conversation. We surfaced a lot of problems. We started to identify some ways to solve them, talked about what are the human skills that we need for an AI world. What I want to do now is share with you a toolkit that we have put together, and you can look for the link coming in the chat now. And really, it's a human skills framework that will outline everything that I talked about, give you the visuals for that, give you the graphics around the strands and the rubrics. But on the back side of it, something that you might be interested in taking a look at is a readiness checklist. And this really looks at different areas of where are you on this human skills journey. We all know that we need to build more human skills in our students. And so are you at a place where you're just establishing what that means for your district? Are you at a place where you're ready to implement and put this into practice? Are you at a place where you're ready to measure and quantify those human skills? And so I think wherever your district is in that readiness checklist is where you are, and there's steps to take. What matters most is that we're continuing to move forward. We're continuing to prioritize a focus on what makes us uniquely human. And so that is, Jenna dropped that in the chat for everyone. And as we round things out, I would just invite each of you to kind of leave us with one final thought, a takeaway that you maybe have, something you've realized as a result of this call, or something that you're really hoping people leave with today. So Travis, do you have an idea to kick us off?
Sure. I'll start with one. For me, I think, there's lots of focus on technology, artificial intelligence initiatives, and there's this focus on we need new things like that. And what I would just encourage us to think about is those new things are just going to be more expensive ways to achieve the same results we've always achieved if we don't change the goalpost, we don't change the destination of why we go to school. It is so critical that we have to rebrand that very essence of that question of what is the purpose in which schools should serve their community in today's world. I believe the definition, the answer to that question is different than it used to be not all that long ago. And how can we rally our communities around the pursuit of human intelligence, given that that is something we can all rally behind and agree upon, not necessarily rally behind, any type of AI exclusive initiative. So that's my hope. That's, what I'd love to see is people really rallying behind human skills and redefining our why.
Thanks, Natalie.
I would say, I would challenge everyone on the call right now to use AI, use technology to develop your own human skills a little bit further. It's November. Our educators have been in classrooms for a very long time and are gearing up for a little bit of a break with the holiday season coming up, and they're feeling it. So take a moment and voice text or send a cute meme to an educator in your life, just letting them know how grateful you are for the work that they do. And just think about ways that as leaders, we can continue to develop our own human skills to show folks what it looks like when they're doing that with students.
Thanks, Natalie. Roman?
I would say that if we don't sooner than later switch to a focus on human skills in our education system, we'll continue to lose students to boredom, to disengagement, to irrelevance, and to chronic absenteeism. Currently, students know that they're just playing a game, particularly middle and high school students. They know they're just playing a game. Some play hard, but most sit on the bench or even leave the arena altogether. And if we're gonna stop the bleeding in our education system, we really just we absolutely need to make a transition, and state leaders need to step up and incentivize it. Otherwise, it'll be too slow.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. I also have that sense of urgency that you're expressing, Roman, that need to do something today. And I think about all the educators that I've had the privilege of working with, and that they are working they're working so hard to build those human skills in students. And every day, the focus is on how to help people acquire the skills that matter most. And I think for me today, this conversation has really helped me see how important it is to define and articulate what exactly that is and what it looks like and what is the progression for learners, because that is how we start to really make a difference in the development of those skills. So I appreciate you helping me see that through tools and resources that educators can use to really understand what do we mean when we talk about social awareness? What does that mean, and how does it develop over the progression of a kindergartner through 12th grader? So I appreciate all of the insights today. I appreciate all of the people in the chat following today and commenting. Thank you so much for joining us. Our next webinar in this Future Ready webinar series is coming up on February 4th. We will be doing an AI Curiosity Lab. We'll be climbing the ladder of innovation, really looking at how do we build human skills through the use of AI. And so join us, mark your calendars, and join us in February. We'll look forward to seeing you in a few short weeks. Thanks, everybody.